Have you ever noticed someone who seems completely fine one day, then suddenly their profile picture goes blank, their posts disappear, and they vanish from every platform like they never existed, only to return weeks or months later as if nothing happened, and then the cycle repeats itself again and again? There's a specific psychological profile behind people who delete their social media accounts periodically, and understanding it reveals something unexpected about how our minds handle identity, control, and the constant pressure of being watched. These individuals aren't just taking breaks or being dramatic. They're caught in a loop that reflects a deeper tension between who they want to be and who they feel forced to become online. And the pattern they follow actually shares features with behaviors studied in addiction recovery, identity reformation, and even witness protection psychology. What makes someone feel the need to erase their digital presence entirely rather than simply logging off? And why does the urge to return always seem to win in the end? The answer involves a collision between our ancient need for social belonging and our modern inability to process the kind of constant visibility that humans were never designed to experience. When someone deletes their social media, they're not just removing an app, they're attempting to reset a version of themselves that has been shaped, judged, and reinforced by thousands of micro-interactions, likes, comments, and silent observations from people they may not even know. The brain treats our online identity as an extension of our physical self, which means that the profile you maintain, the photos you post, and the opinions you share become neurologically connected to your sense of who you are. And when that identity starts to feel uncomfortable, inauthentic, or exhausting, the instinct to destroy it can feel like the only way to breathe again. This is where the cycle begins, because the relief that comes from deletion is real and immediate. You're no longer performing, no longer being judged, no longer scrolling through curated perfection that makes your own life feel small. But that relief is also temporary because the reasons you joined social media in the first place, connection, validation, fear of missing out, curiosity about others, don't disappear just because your account does. Think about how this plays out in real life. Someone deletes Instagram after feeling drained by the endless comparison game. They feel lighter for a few days, maybe even a few weeks. They read more, sleep better, notice the sky, but then something shifts. They hear about an event they weren't invited to. They wonder what people are saying. They feel invisible in a world where visibility has become synonymous with existence. And slowly the discomfort of being outside starts to outweigh the discomfort of being inside. The psychology here involves something called intermittent reinforcement, which is the same mechanism that makes gambling addictive. Because social media doesn't reward you every time you post, it rewards you unpredictably, and that randomness makes the behavior harder to quit than if it rewarded you consistently. When someone deletes their account, they're trying to break free from that loop, but because they haven't addressed the underlying need for validation or connection, they eventually return, hoping this time will be different, that they'll use it in a healthier way. But the platform's design hasn't changed, and neither have the psychological triggers it exploits. People who delete periodically are often more self-aware than those who never question their usage. They recognize that something feels wrong, but the platform is affecting their mood, productivity, or sense of self, but they lack a sustainable strategy to manage that tension, so they swing between two extremes: total immersion and total withdrawal, neither of which actually solves the problem. There's also an identity component that's crucial to understand. Because when you delete your social media, you're not just erasing posts. You're erasing a version of yourself that others have come to expect, and that can feel both liberating and terrifying. If you've spent years presenting yourself as funny, successful, adventurous, or politically engaged online, deleting that presence can feel like killing off a character you've been playing, and even if that character was exhausting to maintain, there's grief in letting it go because it was still a part of you, or at least a part you wanted others to believe. This is why people who delete often come back with a slightly different approach. New username, private account, fewer followers. Because they're trying to rebuild a version of themselves that feels more authentic, but the cycle repeats because the platform's structure doesn't reward authenticity, it rewards engagement. And engagement is driven by emotion, conflict, beauty, outrage, and aspiration, not by the messy, boring, inconsistent reality of being human. Intelligent people fall into this pattern just as easily as anyone else, sometimes more so. Because intelligence doesn't protect you from emotional needs or social pressure, it just gives you more sophisticated ways to rationalize your behavior. A highly educated person might delete their account and tell themselves it's because they're prioritizing deep work or mental health, which may be true, but it doesn't make them immune to the loneliness that follows or the curiosity about what they're missing. And because they're intelligent, they might also feel embarrassed about coming back, as if returning to social media is a failure of willpower or proof that they're just as weak as everyone else. The truth is that this isn't about weakness, it's about design, because social media platforms are built by teams of engineers and psychologists, whose job is to make the experience as hard to leave as possible. Using every tool from variable reward schedules to social proof to fear of exclusion, and no amount of intelligence or self-discipline can fully override systems that are engineered to exploit fundamental human vulnerabilities. The people who delete periodically are actually demonstrating a form of resistance, even if it's imperfect, because they're refusing to accept the platform's terms unconditionally. They're asserting that their well-being matters more than their online presence, and even though they come back, the act of leaving at all is a statement that the relationship isn't working. What makes this cycle hard to break is that social media has become embedded in how we work, how we stay informed, how we maintain friendships, and how we understand what's happening in the world. So leaving entirely can feel like choosing isolation. And for many people that's not a realistic or desirable option. The key to changing the pattern isn't necessarily to delete forever or to stay forever, but to develop enough self-awareness to recognize what you're actually seeking when you open the app, and whether the platform is meeting that need or exploiting it. If you're looking for connection, ask yourself whether scrolling through curated highlight reels actually makes you feel connected, or if it makes you feel more alone. If you're looking for information, consider whether the algorithm is showing you what's true and important, or what's emotionally activating and likely to keep you engaged. If you're looking for validation, notice whether the likes and comments genuinely affirm something meaningful about you, or whether they reinforce a performance that's exhausting to maintain. Awareness doesn't solve everything, but it creates space between the impulse and the action, and that space is where choice lives. The people who manage to break the deletion cycle usually do so by finding alternative ways to meet the needs that social media was filling. They build stronger offline relationships, they create routines that don't depend on digital validation, they consume information more intentionally, and they give themselves permission to be invisible without equating invisibility with irrelevance. They also learn to use the platforms more selectively, checking in with purpose rather than out of habit, and they accept that missing out on some things is the cost of being present for others. The cycle of deleting and returning isn't a character flaw. It's a symptom of a larger conflict between human psychology and the environments we've created. And recognizing that conflict is the first step toward navigating it more consciously. What if the question isn't whether you should delete your social media, but whether you can build a life where it matters less, whether you do,